We are going to the next phase of the tefillah of Rosh Hashanah, and I want to go into the Mussaf service, and I want to go really zoning into one of the key parts of the Mussaf that we're going to go through, that the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Tanya, Am Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva taught us, Imru lefanai b'Rosh Hashanah Malchuyot Zichronot v'shofars. There's a din that on Rosh Hashanah we have to mention these three powerful points. If you want to tap into the spiritual energy of Rosh Hashanah, which literally means drawing down, like we keep talking about, the genetic material of the entire year, of what your life is going to look like for the upcoming year, what your bank account's going to look like, what your relationships are going to look like, what everything's going to look like, then all of that is happening on Rosh Hashanah. And a necessary component is these three ideas. Something called Malchuyot, kingship, Zichronot, remembrance, and shofars. So the Gemara continues, Malchuyot, what's the idea of kingship? Kedei shetamlichuni aleichem. That on Rosh Hashanah Hashem says, I want to be the king. Rosh Hashanah is the day that Hashem reveals himself as the king. In other words, Hashem does not want to be a tyrant. Hashem will rule the world no matter what. But we have a choice of making Hashem a king. The difference being a tyrant rules by force. A king rules because the people choose him. That's what the Gemara says, Ein melech b'lo am. You can't have a king without a people. Which means in a certain deep way, we make Hashem a king. I know that sounds crazy. People, what can you do for God? Nothing! In a certain way, obviously, that's true, because God is infinite. But God revealed to us that He wants to be revealed as a king, a benevolent king of goodness. But the king can only be that king if we choose Hashem to be the king. We anoint the king. That only happens if we're interested in the king. That's why really Rosh Hashanah is the secret of the day of celebrating human free will. Rosh Hashanah is the day of celebrating human free will. I have to take you just one step deeper into the Garden of Eden for a second. The Gemara accepts the opinion of the Zohar that Adam and Eve were created back to back. They were created back to back as Siamese twins. And what was beneficial is that Adam and Eve could never lose each other. They always had, their spouse beside each other. You always have your best friend right there. But the negative part is that they didn't choose each other. They were born as one. And therefore, in the language of Kabbalah, this creates resentment, and this creates what we call back-to-back. If you're forced into something, there's a natural resentment. That's why it would never happen to anybody I know, including myself, but kids oftentimes, I heard, have this thing where they rebel against their parents. Because there's a feeling of that they didn't choose this, and therefore they're forced into it, and therefore there's a need to rebel. And to life. You're put in this world, I didn't choose this. So there's a natural rebellion. Now why is that important? Because the rebellion, this is very deep stuff, the rebellion actually is the separating in order to allow you to then make the choice to return. So Adam and Eve, they're born together as one, which means they're forced into the relationship. It's beneficial because you're one. But it's not beneficial that you never chose your oneness. And therefore on Rosh Hashanah, which is called many, many deep names, Yom Trua, the day of the shofar. Trua also means the day of friendship. Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembering. It's also called Yom HaNesira, the day of the sawing apart. The day when Adam and Eve are sawn apart. And therefore on this day, Adam and Eve are sawn apart. And that's a bit risky though. Because what's the risk of sawing Adam and Eve apart? They could just run their separate ways. The benefit of being one, of being Siamese twins, is you're together. All you have is each other. The risk of being sawn apart is that they could run away. Anybody who was with us for Rabbi Nachman this morning and last week, this is the idea of anosim b'yam derech, is that I could put my derech here, but now there's pathways that could take me other places. So Adam and Eve could say, wow, now that I'm split, goodbye, I'm going to hang out over there with all the other things. So there's a risk involved. But what's the benefit? Is that even though they had 5 billion other things that they could choose, they choose to return to each other. And therefore the bonding and the unifying is much deeper. It's now a unification of choice. So what's happening on Rosh Hashanah? This is happening not just on a local level, this is happening on a cosmic level. Before Rosh Hashanah, humanity is inside of God. Completely. On Rosh Hashanah, humanity is, so to speak, cut off. Not actually, because we never lose contact with God, but this is so beyond crazy deep. Humanity is cut off to such a degree that they receive free will. And they could have a belief system that I could run to 5 billion other things. I could go onto 5 billion other websites that don't have anything to do with God. I could have an illusion of running away. And on Rosh Hashanah is the day that, exactly because we're split off, it's the most risky day of the year. It's the day, are you going to use your free will to run after 5 billion other things? Or are you going to use the day to say, Hashem, all I want is you? This is the power of Rosh Hashanah. This is the power of the day of free will, which is really what we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah, which is the celebration of the human being. Because what distinguishes you and I from the dolphins and the polar bears and the bumblebees is that we have free will. Not free will between vanilla and chocolate ice cream. That's all DNA. That's not free will. It's the free will to choose meaning, to choose relationship, depth, free will to follow my soul, to reconnect with you, Hashem, the soul of all existence, or to follow my animal self and just run away to all the other 5 billion things, all the flavors of the rainbow that are being offered over there. It's a very powerful day. That's why it's the day. What are you being judged on? How you're using your free will. That's the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. Like the last thing somebody wants to do on Rosh Hashanah is be hanging out with all the other 5 billion things. That's the day that Hashem said, exactly when I give you free will, you run somewhere else. It's bad luck. Don't run to 5 billion other things. It's the day, the whole day is about Hashem. Now that I'm, so to speak, split up, because the whole thing is you are one with Hashem. It's all an illusion that there's 5 billion other things. But the illusion allows you to activate free will. So on Rosh Hashanah, the whole day is Hashem, and I'm choosing you. This is the first part of Rosh Hashanah called Malchuyot. Malchuyot is Hashem, I'm choosing you. I want you. Malchuyot is amazing. And Malchuyot, really the side is that the king, there's nothing else but the king. Ein oid milvadai. There's nothing but you, Hashem. Next, Zichronot. Zichronot kadei sheyal zichronchem lefanai l'toiva. Mention Zichronot in order that God says I should remember you for good. Now, what does that mean? God remembering something? What, God forgets? God doesn't forget. Remembrance means, in the language of Hashem, when you remember something, it's at the forefront of your consciousness. It's active. It's like very alive. You're dealing with it now, and you're focusing on giving power to that thing. When we talk about Zichronot, we're talking about Hashem, identify us with these things. So we go through Zichronot. We're going to read all these verses about Zichronot. The secret of Zichronot, for me, Zichronot is like very, very deep. Zichronot is a technology in order to make Hashem the king. Because let's say I show up to Rosh Hashanah, but I'm still identified with this guy that's interested in 5 billion other things. So how do I shift that? How do I shift my focus away from this guy that's interested in 5 billion other things to you, Hashem? So Zichronot is it's very deep. I begin to identify and remember the deepest root of who I am. I remember who I am. I remember who I am. I remember who I am before I did anything wrong. I remember who I am before I did 5 billion things that were just going in some other direction. I remember who I am before I came down from into this world. I remember the way I look like up there in Shemayim. I remember all the way back. And who I am, which is a spark of you, Hashem, only wants you. In that place, Hashem, I only want you. You're right. As you come down to this world, I got lost in the sauce of all these 5 billion other things. But who I am, I'm remembering, I'm going back and re-identifying. That's Zichronot with the real me. The Zichronot is very deep. If you start reading the Psukim in Zichronot, it talks about Noach, it's like all the way back. Takes you way back. The main points in Kabbalah that we focus on in Zichronot is return to the way you look like before your soul even came down to this world. Have that consciousness. Because that you only wants the king. Only wants the relationship. That you is totally pure. And when you focus on that, Hashem says, oh, I see you as that also. And that part of you only wants me, so I can judge you favorably. That part of you only wants me. I'm going to judge you favorably. The guy that's doing 5 billion things and running away and doing all these things, and Erev Rosh Hashanah was, Rahman al-Islam, Lo Aleinu, watching all sorts of inappropriate things. Not a good way to come to Rosh Hashanah. So how do I come in with the right consciousness? I get into this thing called Zichronot. Zichronot is, you should prepare now. Prepare Zichronot now. Already get Zichronot going, thinking about it. Go through the verses of Zichronot. Ubemeh, and how do I finish the technology? B'shofar. Shofar is the essence of the you. Shofar is that cry, that undifferentiated essence that Hashem, you blew my soul into me. That's also Rosh Hashanah, right? V'yipach ba'ap of nishmas chayim. You blew the soul. Man was made like, if we go with certain Rishonim, like a Neanderthal, like a humanoid, like an animal. But he's distinguished than every other animal, and that there's a key moment where everything changes, where God blows a godly soul into him. A ruach memalala, a soul of speech, a soul of das, of deep consciousness, communication. That distinguishes us as different than all the other animals. The ruach memalala. Adam is the first shofar. God blows through Adam. Adam is the shofar. On Rosh Hashanah, we get to a state of being where we touch our neshama through Zichronot as a way to connect to the Malchuyot. And what we do is we blow that soul back through the shofar. We say, Hashem, this soul that you blew into me, I want to just give it to you. I want everything to be dedicated to you. That's the shofar blowing Rosh Hashanah. So this is the technology of Malchuyot, Zichronot, shofars. So at any given point in the day, you should have these verses flowing through your mind. You should have the consciousness of these 3 active elements going on in your consciousness and living with this. Malchus, Zichronot, and shofars. Yes?
How do you get ready for Zichronot?
So I read the verses, and then these are from the Torah, they're from the prophets, and they're from the Ksuvim, which are the later prophetic works. Start reading these verses. These are words of prophecy. You could read The Great Gatsby, or you could read words from Isaiah the prophet. There's a big difference. These are words of prophecy. So you want to fill yourself with exposure to the words of King David. You will become a much more ennobled person by reading the words of King David than the words of, Genghis Khan. Right? Just was a horrible, war-hungry person and killed a lot of people. So choose. Use these days to choose. I spend time going through Zichronot. Zichronot are very powerful. You read Zichronot. Zichronot really gets me into a very special headspace. Also, I spent a few years using a sefer called Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah. Anybody know that sefer? Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah has many inserts of emotional packets of power, of things to feel at certain moments. Literally at this moment, this energy is coming down from heaven. Tap into it now.
What's this sefer called?
Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah. They had them in the Yeshiva. I used to literally daven Rosh Hashanah with the sefer under my machzor, and I'd be doubling with it. I'd go through a line, and then he would say, this is happening now. Feel this. And not in English that I'm aware of, but there's a blue one that's very, very good, and it's easy. It's more easy reading. It flows very nicely. All the Zohars are translated. It was a game changer. I would spend hours in Shemona Esrei just losing myself. The Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah is so good. I'm telling you, years I spent, it changed Rosh Hashanah for me entirely.
There isn't one in English?
Is the article or over?
I don't know if Art School did one yet. Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah. Get somebody to learn it with. And remember, my friends, you guys, it's your birthright to know Hebrew. It's your birthright. Tell Hashem, I need to speak Hebrew. I need to be Jewishly literate. Hashem, I want it. I deserve this. Tell Hashem, I need this. Yeah.
So what's the book called again?
Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah.
And what did it do for you?
It completely slowed me down in the davening of Rosh Hashanah.
Just Rosh Hashanah?
And Yom Kippur. And Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah is, in most of them, it's a 2-volume. And it goes through every single part of Jewish life, spiritually what's happening every single part of the day. And the version that I have, which is the blue version, is very nicely written. It has exclamation marks, or Hashem, it's very geschmack with exclamation. You don't usually find Art School did something? Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah? That's pretty impressive. Lo Shamati Al Zeh, but that's a pretty big deal. Get involved. Art School is amazing. And it gave me this feeling, I'm telling you, while I was davening, that it wasn't I wasn't lost anymore. This becomes there's a lot of stuff to say. I'm lost. I don't know what's happening exactly.
Yeah, I feel like that.
Right? A lot of people feel like that. Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah immediately makes it slow everything down. There's specific energies that are happening at specific times of Rosh Hashanah. We're just speaking as Rosh Hashanah right now. Specific things that are happening at specific times. Don't miss that. Don't miss that energy. Don't miss this window that opens up and allows you to make a download or a withdrawal into your bank account. Spiritually, physically, emotionally, you can receive something right now. Don't miss that. So if a person didn't know, they just kind of go through it. They didn't feel and experience the things that could have been for them. In Kabbalah, the whole thing is about every single thing in davening is a technology to give you something and give you access to certain. The way it's described is you're going through spiritual worlds. You're going to the chambers of the king. Every single room has certain treasures, thank you, treasures and opportunities that you can experience. So if you don't know, then you don't go into those rooms. There's real rooms and keys and things that you can get to. So that sefer made it so much more relevant. I felt so much more in tune. And when that happened, I became in love with Rosh Hashanah. Like in love. Hours, I don't even know, 4 hours, Shemona Esrei, and I felt it was short. Like that was like, oh my goodness, like I guess I have to finish because like the shofar is about to start. Like, you don't want to end. You get to certain points, I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but you can get to certain points where you realize like, I hope Rosh Hashanah never ends ever. Like all I want to do is daven forever. Because you taste something so sweet, like what else is there to do? Like what else is there to do? Like check my Facebook? Like what else is there? You can go to a spiritual world where you're like, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. You get so tuned in. So the Gemara says, "Halavai sheyispal adam kol hayom kuloi." A person really should daven all day. We should be zeicha mamish to tap deeply in. The entry portal is Malchuyot, Zichronot, and shofars. We should be zeicha. Amen. Kol tuv, Rabbi Yisai. Have a wonderful day. To be continued. We're going to go more into Malchuyot, Zichronot, and shofars.
Is it our scroll now?